The car pulled away from the curb, and Julie waved, the familiar gesture carrying an unfamiliar weight this time. Mark, absorbed in his preparations for the upcoming meeting, barely glanced back, his mind already shifting to the challenges ahead. As the vehicle turned the corner and disappeared from view, the smile slid off Julie's face, her arm falling to her side, the echo of the car's engine fading into the silence of the early evening. She stood there a moment longer, a figure framed by the doorway, caught between the life she had settled into and the stirrings of a desire for something more. Inside, the house was quiet, unnervingly so, the stillness amplifying her sense of isolation. It was a spacious, well-appointed home, filled with the trappings of a comfortable life, but it lacked the warmth of companionship that Julie craved. With each step she took back into the living room, the carpet soft beneath her feet, the furnishings around her felt increasingly like artifacts of a life that was visibly perfect, yet emotionally bankrupt. She glanced at the clock. The evening stretched out before her, hours that she would usually fill with the mundane. A bit of cleaning, perhaps, maybe some reading or the usual television shows that she half-watched while scrolling through her phone, not really engaging with any of it. But tonight felt different. Tonight the thought of another evening spent, wrapped in the silence of her own company, was unbearable. A surge of restlessness propelled her upstairs to the bedroom, a space she shared with Mark, but which increasingly felt like her own. Standing before the mirror, she studied her reflection, the familiar contours of her face now tinged with the dull sheen of routine. Her life had become a series of well-trodden paths, each day blending indistinguishably into the next. The realization was sharp, a sudden clarity that she was living on the periphery of her own life, watching it silently from the sidelines. Impulsively, Julie reached for her phone, her fingers scrolling through contacts until she found the number she rarely used. "Hey, are you free tonight?" she texted, her heart hammering with a mix of nerves and excitement. The reply was almost immediate, a lifeline thrown across the waves of her discontent. "Absolutely! Let's do something fun. Need to shake things up a bit." The decision made, a frisson of excitement ran through her. She opened her wardrobe, pushing aside the comfortable, the familiar, the safe choices she habitually reached for. Tonight she would be someone else, someone who embraced life, who laughed freely, who didn't just exist. She chose a dress she hadn't worn in years, its fabric a swirl of vibrant colours, too bold for a quiet night in, but perfect for a night out filled with possibilities. The transformation wasn't just in her attire. As she applied makeup with more care than usual, highlighting her eyes to make them pop, adding colour to her lips, she felt as if she were awakening from a long slumber. Each brushstroke was an affirmation, a reclaiming of her own vitality. By the time she was ready, the woman staring back at her from the mirror was visibly changed, not just outwardly, but inwardly too. The excitement was palpable, a buzzing under her skin that felt like the first flush of youth. Julie grabbed her purse and keys, pausing for a moment at the door. This was it, the first step towards something new, something thrilling. She was nervous, yes, but the excitement of the unknown beckoned stronger than the safety of the known. As she closed the door behind her, it wasn't just the door to her house she was shutting, but the door to the box she had allowed herself to be confined in. The drive to the city centre was a blur, her mind alive with anticipation. She met her friend at a new bar that had recently opened, its reputation for fun and flair a beacon for those looking to escape the drudgery of their daily lives. As she stepped into the pulsating energy of the bar, the music, the laughter, the clink of glasses, she felt as if she was stepping into a new chapter of her life, one where she was no longer just a spectator. That night, Julie didn't just go out. She stepped out of the shadows of her discontent, boldly into the light of her desires. She laughed louder, danced freer, and felt more alive than she had in years. The night was a revelation, a shock to her system that jolted her out of her complacency. And as she let herself be swept up in the joy of the moment, she knew that this was just the beginning. There was no going back to the way things were, not now, not ever. The bar's atmosphere was electric, a vivid contrast to the quiet hum of her suburban life. Here, in the heart of the city, life seemed to pulsate at a different frequency, each beat and bass note reverberating through her. As Julie stepped through the door, the shift was palpable, the air thick with the scent of perfumes mixed with the rich aroma of aged whiskey, and the subtle undertone of excitement. It was a world alive with possibilities, buzzing with the energy of people escaping their everyday lives for a night of unrestrained joy. Julie found herself drawn into this new world with an intensity that surprised her. The bar was a blend of modern chic and rustic charm, its walls lined with shelves filled with glittering bottles, the lighting moody and inviting. Laughter rang out over the music, a melodic backdrop to the conversations that filled the space. People mingled freely, the barriers of their usual lives momentarily dissolved in the shared pursuit of a night's pleasure. It didn't take long for Julie to catch the eye of a group standing by the bar, a vibrant collection of individuals who radiated a zest for life that was infectious. One of them, a woman with a bright smile and an even brighter laugh, waved her over. "Come join us," she called, her voice carrying over the music. The invitation was all Julie needed. With a deep breath that felt like the first in a long while, she moved towards them, her steps light, almost as if she were floating. Introductions were made, names exchanged with handshakes and cheek kisses that seemed to break all the conventional formalities she was used to. Each person was a character in their own right, a young artist with wild curls and eyes full of dreams, a businessman who traded stocks by day and sought out jazz bars by night, a couple who spun tales of their travels around the globe with a passion that made each story come alive. Julie was swept up in their energy, their openness pulling her into their orbit. The night unfolded like a cascade of bright moments. They shared stories, each tale more intriguing than the last, their lives a tapestry of experiences that fascinated Julie. Drinks flowed, each toast a seal on her burgeoning friendships, the clink of glasses a symphony to new beginnings. As they moved from the bar to the dance floor, the music enveloped Julie, the rhythmic beats a balm to her long stifled spirit. Dancing became the night's language, each move a word, each gesture a sentence in a conversation she had never known she'd been missing. The artist guided her through steps to a song she didn't know, their laughter mingling as they moved awkwardly, then more fluidly. The businessman shared anecdotes between songs, his stories a bridge between his world and hers. And the travelling couple invited her to dream of places she had only ever seen in magazines, their descriptions painting vivid images in her mind. Julie felt alive in a way that had seemed just out of reach in her daily life. Each laugh, each dance move, each shared story chipped away at the shell she had constructed around herself. The night air, once a curtain to hide behind, became a canvas, painting her in colours she hadn't known she possessed. The city, with its endless pulse, its ceaseless hum, its vibrant heart, embraced her, a welcome so warm it threatened to undo the seams of her previous reservations. As the night drew to a close, the initial nervousness that had accompanied her on the drive over was a distant memory. In its place was a profound sense of connection, a feeling of being part of something larger, something real and vivid. She exchanged numbers with her new friends, promises to meet again, to not let this be just a one-night wonder, but the start of something that could sustain the newfound spark in her life. Walking back to her car as the first hints of dawn tinged the sky, Julie felt transformed. The city had offered her a glimpse of its hidden depths, and she had dived in without looking back. The quiet that greeted her as she opened her car door was no longer suffocating but comforting, a soft embrace after the night's exhilarations. As she drove back home, the streets empty and bathed in the soft glow of streetlights, she carried with her the pulsating energy of the night, a gentle reminder that life was as much about the moments seized as those meticulously planned. Arriving back at home as the last stars faded and the first light of dawn began to streak across the sky, the house stood silent, almost sombre in contrast to the vivid, vibrant world she had just left behind. The echoes of laughter and music still rang in her ears, a stark reminder of the night that had unfolded so unexpectedly, filled with the thrill of new experiences and the warmth of new friendships. As she moved through the quiet rooms, each step felt heavier, weighed down not by regret but by the realization of what she had ventured into, a space that existed outside the expectations of her daily life. It was as though she had stepped into a different version of herself, one that she had forgotten or perhaps never fully allowed herself to explore. The contrast between this newfound exhilaration and her everyday existence was stark, the latter now seeming more like a faded photograph compared to the vivid colours of her night out. The adventures of the evening had been simple yet profound, dancing without inhibition among strangers who quickly became confidants, sharing stories and drinks, each round more liberating than the last. And then the dare, a spontaneous challenge that had seemed so trivial at the moment, yet felt so significant now. She had sung karaoke, not just in the corner of some dimly lit bar, but on a stage in front of a cheering crowd, belting out lyrics with a confidence she hadn't known she possessed. The applause still echoed, a sound that was now a symbol of her daring to step beyond the boundaries she had once set for herself. Sitting down in the quiet of her living room, the furniture around her felt unfamiliar, as if the rooms were holding their breath, waiting to see if this change was merely temporary or the beginning of something more enduring. She thought of Mark, of the look he might have had on his face if he had seen her tonight. Would he have recognized her, the woman laughing without a care, who danced until her feet ached and sang until her voice grew hoarse? Or would he have seen a stranger in the wife he thought he knew? These thoughts brought a pang of guilt, a reminder of the unspoken vows they had shared, which she had, in a way, set aside for the evening. But alongside the guilt was a newfound sense of self, a realization that her happiness did not have to be confined to the parameters of her marriage or the walls of her home. She had a right to explore, to laugh, to live fully, even if it meant stepping into terrains that were unfamiliar and, at times, unsettling. As the first rays of the sun began to filter through the curtains, casting a soft, forgiving light across the room, a decision began to form in her mind. She needed to bridge the gap between the life she lived and the life she desired, to find a way to bring the joy and spontaneity of this night into her everyday existence. It wasn't just about reconciling with Mark or making amends, but about redefining the boundaries of her life in a way that included room for her own growth and happiness. This night had been a revelation, not just of what she had been missing, but also of what she was capable of. The joy of letting go, of embracing the moment, had opened a door to a part of her that she could no longer ignore. She knew the conversation with Mark wouldn't be easy, that the road ahead would be fraught with challenges as they navigated this new understanding, but she felt prepared, armed with a deeper understanding of herself and what she needed to not just survive, but thrive. The journey of self-discovery she had embarked on was not without risks, but as she sat there in the quiet dawn of a new day, she felt ready to face them. For the first time in a long time, she felt alive, and she was not willing to let that feeling go. She was determined to weave the vibrancy of last night into the fabric of her everyday life, to strike a balance that allowed her to be true to both her commitments and herself. The road ahead was uncertain, but it was hers to travel, and she stepped into the day with a resolve to live each moment with as much passion and joy as she had found in one night of letting go. The moment the door clicked shut behind her, the contrast between the electric buzz of the night and the silent stillness of her home was palpable. As she slipped off her heels, the echo of her footsteps on the hardwood floor seemed to punctuate the quiet, reminding her that the exhilaration of the evening had been an exception, not the rule, in her life. The excitement that had pulsed through her veins just hours before was now giving way to a contemplative solitude, the adrenaline slowly dissipating, leaving behind a mix of euphoria and a sobering clarity. She wandered through the dimly lit rooms, each corner filled with memories of laughter and shared moments, now seeming like relics of a past that felt increasingly distant. The house, once a sanctuary of love and partnership, now underscored a sense of isolation that had crept into her marriage over the years. It wasn't just the physical absence of her husband that night. It was the emotional distance that had been growing between them, a chasm that had widened silently, insidiously, filled with unspoken words and unmet needs. As she made her way to the kitchen for a glass of water, her reflection caught her eye in the window pane, a fleeting glimpse that made her pause. She saw a woman invigorated by a night of freedom, her eyes bright, her cheeks flushed with the remnants of joy. Yet, behind the surface, there was a profound realization about what her heart was yearning for. Connection, excitement, recognition. These needs had driven her to seek out an evening of escape, an escape that provided a temporary salve to the growing realization that her marriage was not fulfilling her emotional needs. Standing there in the quiet, she allowed herself to fully feel the weight of her loneliness, the longing for her husband, to see her as he once had, not just as a partner in the day-to-day routines of life, but as a woman, vibrant and alive with desires and dreams. It was this longing that had remained unvoiced, buried under the responsibilities of their shared life, and it was this that she needed to communicate. The decision to confront these feelings with Mark formed as she sat at the kitchen table, the remnants of the night's makeup still on her face. She knew that this conversation could be a turning point, one that might either bridge the gap between them or confirm the fear that they were drifting too far apart to reconnect. But either outcome, she realized, would stem from a place of honesty and a desire for genuine happiness. Her resolve solidified. She rehearsed the words in her mind, each sentence crafted to express her feelings without blame or resentment. She wanted to explain her need for more of his time, more of his attention, more of the passion that had once defined their relationship. She planned to tell him about her night, not in detail, but in the context of what it had awakened in her, a realization that she could not continue to ignore her own happiness. She also prepared herself for his reaction, knowing that it might not be easy for him to hear about her outing or to understand her feelings. There might be hurt, confusion, even anger, but she hoped that these would be the start of a deeper dialogue, one that could lead to renewed understanding and perhaps a new phase in their marriage. She wanted a partnership that thrived on mutual happiness and fulfillment, not one that merely existed in a state of comfortable complacency. As dawn broke and the first light crept into the kitchen, casting long shadows across the floor, she felt a quiet strength. This strength came not from certainty about the outcome of her forthcoming conversation with Mark, but from a newfound certainty within herself about her needs, her worth, and her right to seek happiness, both within her marriage and within herself. The journey to this realization had not been straightforward, but it was necessary, and it had brought her to this moment of truth, ready to face whatever the day would bring, with a clear heart and an open mind. Mark walked through the door, his steps echoing through the silent house, bringing with them an air of normalcy that now felt strangely out of place. He looked tired, the lines of travel and meetings etched into his face, yet there was an expectancy in his eyes, a sense of coming back to the familiar. Julie watched him, her heart a mix of nerves and resolve, the rehearsed lines of their imminent conversation running through her head like a well-worn script. "Hey," Mark said, his voice carrying a trace of relief at being home. He dropped his bag and moved to embrace her, an action that once would have been met with warmth. Julie, however, held back slightly, the distance in her stance mirroring the emotional space that had grown between them. "How was your night?" he asked, unaware of the tumultuous sea churning inside her. "It was enlightening," Julie responded, her voice steady despite the storm inside. She took a deep breath, the air filling her lungs like courage. "Mark, we need to talk." The weight of those words hung between them, a familiar phrase often the harbinger of serious conversations. Mark's face registered a flicker of concern as he nodded, taking a seat, his posture open, inviting her to continue. Julie paused, gathering her thoughts. "I spent the evening out, trying to find a piece of myself that I feel I've lost over the years," she began, her words careful, deliberate. "It wasn't just about fun, Mark. It was about feeling alive, something that I realize I haven't truly felt in a long time." She watched his reaction, the words landing with a weight that seemed to push the air out of the room. Mark listened, his expression shifting through confusion, hurt, and slowly understanding. "I didn't realize you felt that way," he admitted, his voice low, a mix of sadness and sincerity. "I know I've been distant, caught up in my own world. I'm sorry that's made you feel alone." The conversation that unfolded was raw, the kind of heart-to-heart that had become rare in their interactions. Julie spoke of her loneliness, of feeling more like a fixture in their shared life than a partner. Mark shared his own pressures, the burden of his responsibilities that he had often carried silently, assuming strength was in stoicism. The dialogue was a dance of honesty and vulnerability, each confession a step towards either rebuilding or releasing the ties that had bound them. As the morning light began to filter through the curtains, casting a soft glow into the room, Julie felt a clarity she hadn't experienced in years. "I don't know what the future holds," she admitted, "but I do know that I can't go back to the way things were. I need us to try, really try, to connect again, or we need to think about what it means to be apart." Mark took her hand, his touch tentative but firm. "Let's try," he said simply. "I love you, Julie. I've just been lost in my own head. I miss us, and I'm willing to do the work to find us again." The conversation marked a new beginning, an agreement to mend, to grow, and to reconnect. It was an understanding that change was necessary, that their marriage needed nurturing to thrive. They decided to start counselling to create space in their lives to be together intentionally, not just coexist. The road ahead was uncertain, fraught with the potential for both healing and heartache, but they were committed to travelling it together. Julie felt a mixture of relief and apprehension as Mark left for work, a kiss on her forehead, a promise of efforts renewed. She knew the journey would be difficult, that the excitement of a single night out couldn't compare to the work required to rebuild a life together. But as she watched the sunrise, its light spreading a golden warmth across the sky, she felt hope. Hope that the honesty of their conversation had laid a foundation for renewal, and that, regardless of the outcome, she was moving forward, embracing the complexity of her emotions and the possibilities of her future.